You might have heard advice to beat being camera shy, like fake it till you make it, or fake it till you are it. But I prefer another approach to understand the why behind so many of us feeling this way, and then build a practical step-by-step path to desensitize yourself to the camera. And that's what we'll do today in this episode. For many small business owners and entrepreneurs and educators and consultants, having a visible online presence is not really optional anymore. It's how we find our leads. It's how we connect to our audience. It's how we build a brand and build trust. Being engaging, educating, or entertaining on camera can be a direct path to growth in these things. But knowing that doesn't make it any easier to press record and publish your work. The moment you do, that anxiety can kick in. You might get apprehensive. You might get really stuck in your head making decisions. Maybe it's your self-critic that gets really, really loud. And then suddenly you don't seem like any version of your real self on the screen or in your ears. And it's really hard to connect as a human when you're really anxious. And if that sounds familiar, I want to tell you two things. First of all, you're not alone. This is a completely natural human response to recording ourselves on a screen. The root of this anxiety is often social, and understanding why that's the case is really important for managing that anxiety. So I'm going to break down the science of that anxiety, and then I'm going to give you a really practical step-by-step plan to gradually build your on-camera skills, starting from wherever you are right now today. Hi, I'm Jen DeHaan, and this is the Human Internet Theory. In these episodes, you'll learn different ways to communicate and connect as a human on a very crowded internet filled with generated content. That's growing more and more every single day. I have a degree in education. I went to film school, and I've been working in tech for decades, and more recently in comedy and performance. And by the end of this episode today, you'll learn what your audience is most likely actually thinking when they watch your videos or hear your podcast or whatever you're making. And I'm going to guess that your inner critic might disagree with what I have to say. So let's see. So before we get to a plan to get comfortable on camera, we need to first understand how our brains work and what's making this thing so hard. And knowing how this works is what makes overcoming it possible. So glossophobia is the fear of public speaking. And in a study, a survey found that people experience this fear, glossophobia. So if you feel fear about being seen and heard and perceived, you're in very good company. I'm right there with you. But why? It's not likely that a camera or a microphone is like threatening on its own. I hope not. The reason is that for most of human history, social rejection was really dangerous. We needed our social community to help us survive too, to find access to food and water, to help, to protection from the bears and stuff. Our brains are therefore wired with a sensitivity for social judgment. So some of us, some more than others, might experience this even more depending on what our lived experience is like. So here we have a potentially massive unseen audience out there. I mean, if things go well, it's massive, but I mean, it's not going to be yet. Anyways, our brain wiring is just not built or used to this thing called the internet. So it doesn't differentiate between, say, a social community trying to find food and fend off bears and a YouTube comment section. It just says like, hell no to all of that. In addition to that brain wiring, we layer on more and more on top of it, like imposter syndrome, for example, which is basically that feeling that you're a fraud and you're going to be found out. Like you start thinking, who am I to be teaching this? Why would anybody listen to me or get my thing? I'm just starting this show, so you can probably guess where my brain is at right now. And all of these layers can feel completely overwhelming, especially in front of the lens. The stories that we tell ourselves can be pretty intense, and that might even stop us from even starting putting out anything in the first place. And then, if we do manage to start, we often become obsessed with trying to look and speak perfectly. And this can lead to performances that end up feeling like really stiff and forced and completely unnatural because you're totally in your head. And we believe all these things going around our head about us in the moment. Like, say, when we're staring at that little blue light when we're in an empty room while we're recording, or we're editing that footage afterwards. And that self-critic might say, see, I told you, you're really bad at this thing. So we need to break that loop. And getting comfortable on camera is important because its purpose is to let your true human self come through the internet tubes so you can connect and engage human to human and deliver that value more effectively. And how you naturally engage in a way that most closely represents who you are human to human will help you stand out amongst a bunch of generated bot traffic content, things that the robots are making. So how do we do that? The core principle is desensitization. It's similar to like exposure therapy in a way. The more that you expose yourself to that thing that feels really intimidating to you in a controlled and premeditated way, the less power that thing has over your brain. So recording on camera is a learned skill, just like most things that we do in life. And that learned skill will improve with repetition or reps. And the really important thing here is to start small and gradually increase the complexity. So you need your own personalized plan that's right for you to allow you to iterate and build upon this learned skill. And here's what that plan might look like. So first, figure out your starting point. Where are you right now when it comes to this skill? If being on camera at all is terrifying, or you haven't ever done it before, you won't want to start with like a 20-minute YouTube video. So start on Zoom. For example, there are tons of free online meetups and book clubs or networking groups where you can just practice being on camera in a really low-key, low-stakes environment. You could even join an online improv class or jam session. Maybe that's your next step after that. It's like improv is especially good to practice if your goal is to eventually do, say, live webinars or live streams or other forms of education in person too. And if you're used to recording yourself, but say not posting on the internet, you might want to start there. Use your phone to record really short, informal chats to the camera that really nobody will probably ever see. And you're just doing that to get used to the feeling of it. And once you're ready to actually post something, you can opt to start with platforms where, say, the content has a short lifespan. You could create a new account without your name on it just for practice, so nobody really finds it, nobody that you know. For example, Instagram or Facebook stories that disappear in 24 hours, or even TikTok or YouTube Shorts, where the content cycle moves so incredibly fast that your video is only in the feed for a really short period of time amongst so many other things. So short or disappearing videos, or these ones that just move so fast, all of this really lowers the stakes of what you're doing. These are good starting points. Now, from there, you can build up, or you can find new ways to get your reps in. Maybe your next step is to focus on your voice, say, for longer, faceless videos. Those are where you only use your voice, like you put the slides or the screen recordings over top. This lets you practice your scripting and your voice delivery without the added pressure of your face, and less equipment too, if that's an issue. And a podcast is another way of practicing this, and you often start with no listeners for quite some time on a podcast. And while you're doing all of these steps, you'll probably also be editing your work and getting used to seeing and hearing yourself on camera during the editing process That's another step as well. So the most important part of this process is to get comfortable with each step before moving on to the next one. And you have to plan to be incredibly forgiving with yourself during this. You are learning a new skill. So there are going to be setbacks. There are going to be plateaus where you feel like you aren't improving. And these are all normal parts of the process and things to plan for, so you don't get those setbacks or discouraged. I didn't consider any of this when I first started out with video, and I really wish I had, because I probably set myself back for a while. I was encouraged to record some choreography I did for dance fitness classes I was teaching, and then share that choreography. And one of the only ways I could do that was on YouTube because of music licensing restrictions. Now, dancing on camera and having it live online is certainly not a good place to start when you're not comfortable with being filmed at all. So I gave up pretty quickly. I think I did 3 videos because it was just too much. And a year or two later, when I started using the camera on Zoom meetings during online improv, I was really uncomfortable again, especially if those things were recorded. Because even though I had performed on stage for many, many years in front of crowds, I was so uncomfortable with a camera involved. But I stuck with it. And those classes on camera eventually really helped me get comfortable with the lens and recording them and putting stuff online. And there's one more thing that's particularly true now in the age of AI and massive amounts of content creation competing with that generated content. Things move very, very fast. Yes, you want your published work to be good and memorable, but one mediocre video is not going to ruin your business forever, even if you have a lot of followers. The internet has a very short memory. So the pressure to be perfect is really an internal thing for all of us to kind of get over. So if you're finding this video useful, you might also find my newsletter useful as well. You can subscribe for the free newsletter and I will send you additional resources to your inbox. You can sign yourself up at humaninternettheory.com. So the path forward is understand the fear and then figure out some manageable steps to incrementally make things a bit harder for yourself wherever you are. And that anxiety you feel when the camera turns on is a part of the brain that has evolved to keep you safe within a social group, to work together, to survive, to hunt, to gather food. That's really not relevant here. So it's not relevant if you're trying to put content online for your business or educate your students. And by understanding that, you can start to acknowledge the anxiety so it doesn't control you anymore and you can get started. And then you can build a practical and gradual plan that involves starting small, getting those reps in, learning, iterating, and most importantly, being kind to yourself along the way. So now that question, what is the audience really thinking when they watch your videos? Now, your inner critic might think that everyone is watching intensely focused, and they might see all of your mistakes, all of those things that you perceive as mistakes, like the weird hand gestures I've been doing, or that I do too many of them, or some word that you stumbled on, or my hair. But think about why you stayed here to the end. The audience is much more focused on themselves and what they get from the video than they are on you. They click the thumbnail because they thought, what is in this video for me? And they continue watching your video because they want to know what value they're going to get from your work. Is it something useful for something that the audience is working on? What are you working on? Is this useful for that? Will it save you some time at work so you can walk your dog more? Will it solve a problem? Is it interesting or entertaining? One of those reasons is probably why you're here still. At least it's like a lot more important than my hair or glasses, which, I mean, they're not great, but whatever. It's the value, right? And that is what determines what you return to someone's content or listen to them again or buy something that they're offering or whatever it is. As long as you are providing that value, that you are solving a problem, your audience is going to be very forgiving of any imperfections, or they're not even going to notice them. And really, if there are those imperfections, they're often what make you relatable and human. And that's what we're here for. So shift your focus from yourself to your audience. Focus on the value that you're giving your audience. Thanks for tuning in. That's all I have for today. Bye for now. And watch these other videos that are somewhere on the